We start. So, yesterday we were discussing about the beginning of modern age in Europe, and we had discussed how the beginning of modern age took place in Europe. We had also discussed about an important event that is marked to be, or that triggered the beginning of the modern age in Europe, and that event is basically the fall of an important city known as the Constantinople. It fell to the Turks, which were under the Christian control in 1453, and with defeat of the Europeans, the Turks began to dominate the whole area surrounding Constantinople, which was equally important for trading activities. We had discussed that. In order to understand it more effectively, one map has been given to you. Just understand, so that you can understand the cascading effect of the fall of Constantinople. Because we had discussed a debate also why the fall of Constantinople is to be taken as an event to mark the beginning of modern age, not the Renaissance, and not even the discovery of American continent by Columbus, nor even the 95 Theses that led to Reformation in Christianity by Martin Luther. Just look into this map, clear? And try to understand the map of Europe from the very beginning, because one concept I'll let you know. World history that we'll be discussing as per our syllabus, that starts from the age of enlightenment, that is 17th and 18th century. World history is largely synonymous with European history, clear? Because everything started in Europe, and even the developments that took place in faraway America and Asia and Africa was largely due to developments in Europe only. So this thing needs to be understood, where the major countries are located, how these countries shaped the course of European history. Now if we look into this, look into the southeastern part, clear? There's Ottoman Empire. Just look at the Ottoman Empire, clear? Ottoman Empire was an Islamic empire which was established at this time only. With fall of Constantinople, this Ottoman Empire or Islamic empire continued till the year 1923, after the First World War, when at the same time the Ottomans were defeated by powers in First World War. And beyond the Ottoman Empire, look the city of Constantinople. Locate the city of Constantinople, and we had discussed yesterday this city is identified with present Istanbul. Istanbul is a city in Turkey right now. Now just understand, clear? There's above this you can locate Holy Roman Empire, clear? Holy Roman Empire, which largely corresponds with present countries of Germany and Austria. Vienna is also there, clear? Holy Roman Empire was in two parts, that is Western Holy Roman Empire and Eastern Holy Roman Empire. Eastern Holy Roman Empire was only conquered by the Turks, that led to the establishment of the Ottoman Empire. So Eastern Roman Empire came to an end with fall of Constantinople. Western Roman Empire continued to exist, corresponding with regions of Germany and at the same time the region of Austria. Now Ottoman Empire was there with its capital city at Constantinople. Since Romans were defeated at this point of time, Romans were forced to move away from Constantinople, and you can recognize that why they shifted back to the western side, and the next country, mainland region that was there in the western part was the region of Italy. You can locate Kingdom of Naples, Sicily, Papal States, Republic of Venice, clear? This whole region is that of Italy. And since Italy was located at this point of time, clear, all the Europeans or Christians people shifted to Italy. They started the revival of classical learning. They decided to start era of geographical discoveries to reach up to the region whereby trade could be established with Asia and Africa. And this era of geographical discoveries incidentally led to the discovery of North America also by Columbus. So all this concept of Renaissance, geographical discoveries, was triggered basically by one development, and development was the fall of Constantinople by the Turks in the year 1453, that ultimately resulted into a large Islamic empire known as Ottoman Empire, comprising of this region, and in course of time extended to Asia and Africa as well. The whole African continent is located south of the Mediterranean region. In course of time, Ottomans shifted to North African region also. The most important country in North America, Africa being Morocco. We'll discuss Turks settled down in Morocco became a very important development that became a reason for First World War also. So locate this thing very well, clear? On the top of this, there's England, clear? England along with Ireland and Scotland, clear? This country is very important. We'll discuss industrialization took place first of all in this country, and this had impact on not only Europe, large parts of Asia and Africa as well. Europe is, or England is not connected with European mainland directly. The water body that is there in between is known as the English Channel. How many of you know about the concept known as England? There's another concept known as Great Britain, and there's another concept known as United Kingdom. How many of you know that? Yeah, please. What do you mean when we say the word England? Simple England.
So England is only England, but if England and Wales is combined, it forms Britain. And
England and Wales is combined is known as Britain. Okay, fine.
Wales plus Scotland, it forms Great Britain. England, Wales, Scotland plus Northern Ireland forms United Kingdom, and all the rest of the Ireland with England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland forms the British Isles.
British Isles. See, you are clear, but there's one thing. England is a separate region that you can locate right now. There's simply England. Clear? If England combined together with Wales and Scotland, clear, then it will be termed as Great Britain. If it is only England and Wales included together known as Great Britain, then why the present World Cup that is going on, they are writing venue as England and Wales? They could have written Britain also. No. England, not only Wales, England, Wales and Scotland combined together will form Britain, Great Britain. Clear? And England, Wales, Scotland plus Northern Ireland will form United Kingdom. Clear? This is known as that. And the whole region comprising of Ireland is known as British Isle. Clear? So England plus Wales is nothing. It's England only. England plus Wales plus Scotland will be Great Britain. Clear? England, Wales, Scotland plus Northern Ireland, it is known as United Kingdom. Clear? Yeah, please.
So, sir, there is a difference between Britain and Great Britain, or Britain is like it nothing exists?
No, it's British. Great Britain is the normally term because to give the royal heritage, importance to the royal heritage. Great Britain or Britain, same thing. Britain means Britain, Wales and Scotland. If Britain and Wales, England and Wales could have been Britain, why all the venue that is going on, you said England and Wales? They could have written Britain also. They are not writing Britain because Scotland is not included. If Scotland will get included, then it will be termed as Britain or Great Britain. And in that category, if you include Northern Ireland, it will be termed as United Kingdom, UK. Clear? This concept is clear. It's very important region. Coming to the northern side, just located Norway, Sweden, Denmark. All these countries combined together in the northern pole is known as Scandinavian region. Very important region, sensitive to environmental considerations and highly peaceful countries all across the globe. Clear? Then coming to the south, we have countries that is, if you look into Hittite heights, these countries are basically Latvian countries. Clear? Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, just beside Russia. We'll come to these modern countries also. Coming to the south, we have Poland. It comes under Eastern Europe. Clear? Poland is Eastern Europe. Beyond Poland, there's a country that is known as Germany. Right now, it was Holy Roman Empire at that time. Germany, then followed by Austria. Austria followed by Hungary. Clear? From Poland, Hungary, and all these regions, this is known as Eastern Europe. Clear? Beyond this, the countries are known as Western Europe. In fact, after Second World War, I'll let you know, this region of Holy Roman Empire, including Germany, was also divided into East Germany and West Germany. Clear? East Germany was included under Eastern Europe. West Germany was included under Western European region. Clear? This is Europe. France comes under Western Europe, then coming to Spain, Portugal, then Italy. All these are Western European countries. Eastern Europe will start from the regions of Poland, Hungary, then Ottoman Empire, including Turkey as well, and then coming to the other side as well. Clear? That is why, even now if you look into that, what is the problem with the European Union? The problem with European Union is Western European countries feel they are bearing the burden of the less developed Eastern European countries. Therefore, European Union has decided to break also. Britain decided to walk away, which is known as Brexit. All these things needs to be understood. Now understand the importance of Constantinople. Constantinople forced the people to move towards Italy, and when they moved towards Italy, they started the revival of classical learning, which is known as Renaissance. At the same time, they promoted the era of geographical discoveries that result into exploration of new world, including North America. Therefore, we had discussed the debate yesterday that modern age began only with fall of Constantinople, which triggered several developments in course of time. It was not because of discovery of America, or it was also not because of reformation started by Martin Luther, who began to criticize the corrupt practices of the church in Europe. This is clear first of all. See, geography, history is all about time, and geography is about space. We'll discuss this also today itself, because Kant, that we'll discuss, he only relied on two disciplines to understand the whole humanity, history and geography. Clear? Therefore, history is about time, geography is about space. We cannot understand history without understanding the geography also. So brief understanding of geography is also important to understand all historical developments. This brief idea is clear. We'll keep on locating the map and important locations in course of time. Clear? Now coming back, clear? Yesterday we had discussed that modern age began with reformation or with this development known as Enlightenment ideas, which is considered to be the last phase of the Renaissance. Enlightenment started in the 17th and the 18th centuries, and this Enlightenment ideas was started by a new philosophy, basically the philosophy being known as deism. We had discussed about the philosophy of deism, which believe that there is a God who created the whole universe, but God expects the people to have ethical and moral code of conduct. Clear? At the same time, ethical moral code of conduct was expected to promote collective welfare of the society. Such ideas whereby existence of God was accepted, and at the same time moral order was to be reinforced, was promoted by philosophers of deist school, the prominent among them being Kant, Rousseau, and even a very prominent philosopher of France, Voltaire. We'll discuss about all these philosophers, their ideas, because their ideas are asked. In our syllabus, explicitly we are mentioned only with Kant and Rousseau, but we cannot discuss Rousseau without discussing Voltaire, because it is considered Voltaire triggered the idea of morality in Europe, which was unleashed effectively by Rousseau. We get this short notes in world history. Therefore, first of all, we'll discuss about Voltaire, then Rousseau. But even before them, first of all, we'll discuss about Kant, his philosophy also being known as Kantianism. Clear? We'll understand about Kant. Till this point, it's clear. Yeah, please. Rationality also, logic and reason. Clear? It was basically that God is there. No one has perceived God. No, rational approach. Logic and rational guided by ethical considerations. Yeah. Logic and rationality was to be there, guided by ethical considerations. Clear? Now just understand about Kant. Clear? See, in the 18th century, a very important philosopher and thinker emerged in a country at that time. This country was known as Prussia. Clear? Right now Prussia is not in existence. Prussia is a part of Germany. Clear? So Prussia was an important region adjoining Germany, which is located in Holy Roman Empire. Prussia was an important country where an 18th century philosopher emerged known as Immanuel Kant. Clear? He studied physics and mathematics in his student life, and after attaining his quality or his education, he began to promote his ideas. First of all, his ideas were based on physical science like mathematics and physics, which was totally based on logical thinking. And in order to highlight his philosophy about the validity of physics and mathematics at this point of time, he wrote an important work in 1781 known as The Critique of Pure Reason. By perception and observation, he made several mathematical calculations, he made several physical observations, and all these observations were written in a book entitled as The Critique of Pure Reason. He went on criticizing his reason, and therefore in course of time deducted the basic theory of physics and mathematics, and that he wrote in his work Critique of Pure Reason in 1781. But at the same time, this book could not be very popular because it was the beginning of Renaissance, or at the end of Renaissance, people were still not very aware. He realized that mere physical science will not serve the purpose of the people. After some time, he went forward to give ethical considerations to even physical science like physics and mathematics. He made it clear, even these disciplines are useless until it can be utilized for the welfare and development of the masses. He began to criticize the existing ideas at this point of time on the basis of logic and rationality, and after criticizing them and highlighting his ethical beliefs to be promoted through physical science also, he wrote another work just after some years known as The Critique of Physical Science. Clear? Observation. When he wrote this work at this point of time, he began to highlight about ethical considerations at this time. Ideas began to get popular and people began to think rationally and logically in order to question the superstitious beliefs at that point of time. Combining together his observation about physical science and ethical consideration, he wrote a third book also by the end of 18th century known as The Critique of Judgment. And in this work, Critique of Judgment, he made it clear people should have this ability to judge any phenomena in the universe based on rationality and logic. it should not be judged merely on superstitious beliefs and the beliefs promoted by the papal authorities or the church in Europe. Rationality began to evolve from there onwards, and in these three books side by side, he highlighted some other philosophies, in which the most important was he advocated universal law of ethics, and in this he believed this ethical consideration should not confine only to one section, it should be universally applied all across the world to promote the welfare of human beings. So he took the highest view of human beings, that they can achieve any target provided ethical considerations all across the world is highly promoted and accepted at this time. At the same time, he made it clear that state is a necessary evil. A state has to be there. But the ruler of the state, the king, should ensure the welfare of his subjects, because without the welfare of the subjects, humanity cannot be promoted. Therefore, state came into being rudimentarily at this time as an evil necessity to maintain law and order, but with compassionate view that welfare of the masses must be promoted and ensured. He highlighted this consideration as well. Apart from highlighting these things, he made it clear the whole circumference of knowledge can be achieved only with two disciplines, and these two disciplines were history, which mentions about study of time, and geography, that mentions about study of space. He emphasized on two important disciplines of history and geography in order to understand the overflowing events in course of time, guided by certain contextual things like environmental consideration, to have a holistic understanding and then to come out to a final judgment and conclusion how the future course of action must be taken. So he not only observed the contemporary things, he gave a way out also to the future generation what should be the reference point to come at any valid conclusion. So people got certain reference points with his ideology, and people began to take valid decisions based on rationality and logic under the theory and philosophy given by Immanuel Kant. This whole approach of Kant is known as Kantianism in the 18th century. He became one of the pioneers of Enlightenment ideas in the 18th century Europe. These are major ideas of Immanuel Kant of the 18th century. It's clear about this philosophy, clear? Right from here, what was the last sentence that we wrote yesterday? Last sentence. Three institutions, clear, autocratic monarchy. Philosophy of Kant is clear, first of all. Now just understand. In the class yesterday, we had discussed that there was a transitory phase which marked the end of medieval age and the beginning of modern age, and this transitory phase marked the strict criticism of three medieval institutions. These medieval institutions were: number one, autocratic monarchy. That is why state was considered to be an evil necessity even by Kant. Second was dominance of church. That is why it led to reformation by Martin Luther. And third important socio-economic structure was feudalism in Europe. We'll discuss about these medieval institutions also that began to be highly criticized. And with this system, a new era began from 18th century, which is termed as the modern age in Europe. So these three are major features of the medieval system in Europe: autocratic monarchy, existence of feudalism, dominance of the church. We'll just understand this, clear? Before we go on to write about Kant, just understand, what do we mean by autocratic monarchy? What do we mean with this term autocratic monarchy? How it is different from simply monarchy? What do you mean by autocratic monarchy? Autocrat. What does the word auto means? If you go to literal sense also the meaning will come. What does the word auto means? Self, clear? Autocrat means any person who is taking all decisions on his self without considering anyone, clear? Autocratic monarchy means one person is an autocrat without any restrictions to take all decisions on his self-observation, clear? Without caring about the reactions of the masses, without caring about the sensitivity of the masses, clear? Autocratic monarchy means a system whereby one single person without caring for masses takes decisions on his own, clear? This was a dominant institution of medieval system in Europe because all the countries were ruled by people belonging to royal families. They began to rule not because of their virtue or any power, but only because of they belong to the royal family. They proved to be totally autocrat. They never responded to the concern of the masses. Clear? The autocratic monarchy was witnessed in all major countries of Europe, starting with England. There was Tudors and Stuarts who ruled in England without caring for masses. There was Bourbon family ruling over France. There was Hohenzollern family ruling over Austria. There was Romanov family ruling over Russia. Members were elected to rule, not on the consent of the masses. They began to rule because they belonged to the royal family. They never cared for the masses, and therefore enlightened thinkers and philosophers, they began to question the validity of autocratic monarchy. That is why even Kant said, state is an evil necessity. Monarch has to be there, but monarch should be compassionate and sensitive to the concern of the masses. Meaning thereby, he wanted to place certain check and restrictions on autocracy of the monarch in Europe. This was one distinctive feature of medieval Europe. Second distinctive feature of medieval Europe was dominance of the church, the papal authority. Since Christianity was the dominant faith, the papal authorities, the Pope began to misuse their power in order to amass wealth and even to amass social prestige as well. And in this regard only we had discussed yesterday, the Pope and the papal authorities began to sell certificates of indulgences, whereby the sins committed by the person in the worldly life could be remitted, provided they purchase the sale of indulgences or certificate of indulgences. This led to huge wealth in the church, and corrupt practices began to take place. Against this sale of indulgences, only Martin Luther, a prominent reformer in Germany, gave his 95 theses, and that resulted into a protest movement against Catholicism in Europe, and that led to another sect in Christianity known as Protestant faith in Christianity. This was again criticized by enlightened philosophers, that is dominance of the church. Third is feudalism. Clear? We'll understand this concept here, and here only we'll understand how European feudalism has been different from feudalism in India. First of all, we'll understand the concept of feudalism. First of all, write about autocratic monarchy and power dominance of church, then we'll move on to feudal structure. Right, introduction first. Clear? We have written the 3 points. Right, the medieval age in Europe. The medieval age in Europe was marked by monarchs. Monarchs who came to power by virtue of belonging to the royal family, Okay. Right, these monarchs took decisions. These monarchs took decisions without caring for masses, and despotism prevailed. Autocracy is also despotism, and despotism prevailed. Despotism prevailed all across Europe. Clear, right? For example, France was ruled by the members of the Bourbon family. This name can easily be remembered. Was ruled by the members of the Bourbon family, whereas Russia was ruled by the members of the Romanov family. All were autocrats. Romanov family. Say, I'll let you know, while discussing all these things, we are understanding the overall scenario of Europe. This will be using in course of time. When we'll discuss about reasons for Russian Revolution, autocratic monarchy of Romanov family was also one reason. We'll come to that. So have this understanding very clearly. Clear? So these were prominent families, Romanov in Russia. Right. This led to huge resentment among masses. They were not elected. This led to huge resentment among masses. presentment among masses, which was supported by enlightened thinkers in the 17th and 18th centuries. In the 17th and 18th centuries. One major factor, change paragraph, clear? Right. The second major institution was church in Europe, that exercised authority over masses. Clear? Right. The church and its authorities. Entered into several corrupt practices. Like sale of indulgences, we had discussed yesterday, like the sale of indulgences, right? Moreover, the clergy class, the authorities of church, the clergy class was exempted from all forms of taxation. And the burden of taxes fell on the common people. Which led to further resentment. Clear? Right. Third, clear? Right. The third major institution of medieval age in Europe, was feudal structure. Now understand this concept, it's very important in history, clear? To understand feudalism. See, I'll let you know, you get questions in prelims also, in mains also, clear? Last year there was a question feudalism, and normally you will ask what are the distinguishing features of feudalism, clear? Why they ask features? Because until this you have conceptual clarity, you won't be able to correct this question. See, I'll come to a question. See, from history, don't think that even in prelims you will get any question which is factual. Clear? Make it very clear. I'm talking about prelims. Leave aside mains. Mains is all about analysis and perception. Clear? PT also, you won't get any question which is factual. For instance, I'll let you know. Last there was that which among the following was not the distinctive feature of feudalism in India. They'll give you 4 features. They'll ask you which among them was not there. Weakened central authority, emergence of the nobility class, then surrender of titles. All these are very important features. We'll understand that. Similarly, I'll let you know this time, they have asked a question very conceptual nature. What does the term vesti or forced labor indicated in ancient India? What does it mean? They are not looking for factual knowledge, they are looking for concept. And will come, what does the forced level of vesti, which was prevalent during Gupta period, meant in India? Concept questions are very conceptual. They are not going to ask any factual question. Even from history, approach needs to be changed. Clear? So never try to mug up. Clear? The day will start mug up, the subject will be out of your control. Clear? Many people come to me with a spectrum and all, so thick book, and you won't be able to correct even a single question. Clear? UPSC cannot be done with works of compilation. I keep on saying Lakshmi Khan and spectrum will never sail you through until you raise basic textbooks. That gives you concepts. Why do we emphasize in CITs? Concepts needs to be understood. Clear? They asked the question Charter Act of 1813. Last year also they have asked question Charter Act of 13. That time it was related to education. This time Charter Act of 20 was related with respect to monopoly of trade abolished by British company. They will not ask any factual question. They'll ask you about concept. Clear? So make it very clear. We'll understand the concept of feudalism right now. Yeah, please first. Hmm. Hmm. Just repeat the sentence that you told. Speed. Hmm. Hmm. Exploitative nature. Yeah. Hmm.
Generally, when there's a existence of state,
Hmm.
so the nature or the scope of
Hmm.
nature will be
Different.
exploitative.
Exploitative. See, I'll let you know. This is a very valid thing, I'll let you know. Clear? Her question is, and can be important for all of you also. See, that is why I say this discipline will give you overall understanding about everything, even polity also. See, her question is that here it is being depicted that the state is an exploitative system of machinery, whereby state tries to encroach upon the rights of the people, state tries to give some additional benefit to certain sections of the people, and obviously the burden keeps on falling on the masses or shoulders of the masses. You mean to say that, clear? So you mean to say that nature of the state keeps on changing from time to time, but largely it is to be perceived as an exploitative machinery. Just understand, clear? Kant also said that state is an evil necessity. Now what do we mean when we say evil necessity? The word itself. What Kant wanted to say that state is an evil necessity, meaning thereby he also did not support the existence of state, but said it is an evil necessity, it is bound to take place. But at the same time he guided that state should be considerate towards the interest of the masses. Now again I am coming to that point. Several writers, several philosophers in history and political science has always given their own interpretation about the state and its machinery. Clear? I'll let you know. Right from ancient times it is believed that law and order has to be maintained. Just understand how the state came into being. Law and order has to maintain. Why? Because in ancient times when there was tribal culture, tribal polity, the only thing that was the whole issue was decided by only one thing: whosoever was powerful took away the resources. Meaning thereby there was no major scope to protect the interest of the vulnerable or the weak sections. For instance, Aryans came to India with horses, defeated the indigenous people of India, and all the people were declared to be Shudras. It was not because of any other reason, but primarily because they were defeated by the people coming from the northwestern part of India. That is one thing. State, they began to maintain law and order, and while maintaining law and order, they began to recruit state authorities. They had one authority to rule over them, that is known as Rajan or king. The king began to rule, state began to come. Now, when state establishes with this notion that law and order has to maintain. But for what? Why law and order? Why state will take this whole responsibility only that law and order has to maintain? Because the reason is the state that will come into being to maintain law and order, it will maintain law and order so that proper system and revenue collection could be done. Clear? Because law and order cannot be sustained also or cannot be maintained also without collection of revenue. Since people has to surrender part of their income to the state in lieu of being protected by the state, a contract enters into between the people on the one hand, state on the other hand. This is merely a contract. That is why when we discuss Rousseau, why we are discussing this one, he declared a social contract theory. It's merely a contract. But till the time it is a contract, it is the best thing, nothing that. Because if any one of them does not fulfill their obligation, state has to come to an end. If a state fails to maintain law and order, people has the right to eliminate the state. If people fails to pay land revenue or revenue on time to the state has the authority to take action. In this sense, a state proves to be overreacting in nature, rather authoritative in nature. If states behaves to be authoritative in nature, it is normally perceived to be exploitative in nature. Clear? So normally, since people fails to pay land revenue on time, any revenue on time, the lands and properties are being confiscated, state seems to be totally discriminatory and exploitative in nature, especially the countries where economy is largely agrarian in nature. That is why Mahatma Gandhi will discuss when he was there in the national movement of India, he was totally against any kind of state because he knew India is an agrarian country and whole agriculture of India is dependent on climatic variations, and if peasants fail to pay land revenue on time, the state will confiscate the land which was not acceptable to him, because he was of the opinion land belongs to the cultivators, the tillers of the land. And in any case, the state comes into being to collect land revenue, the state will be exploitative in nature, it will basically take away away the properties of the common masses. Normally it is to be perceived as a negative concept. There's no doubt about it. Clear? So this case category, it varies from state to state, nature of the state. For instance, if a country like United States, where economy is largely service oriented, clear, obviously state will not be considered as exploitative in nature, because it is not that based on climatic variations which is not in our hand, people has to pay land revenue. It cannot be exploitative. Why it is exploitative in developing countries like India? Because obviously our mainstay, that is economic activity, is agriculture, and agriculture is dependent on climatic variations, which is not in our own hand. Clear? That thing needs to be understood. So when state began to evolve, Rousseau will discuss, he gave the social contract theory, that is state and people are entered into a contract. If any one party does not follow this contract, rules of contract, it can be ended at any point of time. And most of the cases, people could not fulfill the obligation, state reacted against them, and that resulted into exploitative system. Therefore, with regard to this only, we went on different kinds of state: democratic state, representative state, constitutional state. Why? We wanted to restrict the powers and authorities of the state, so the arbitrary measures could be adopted, people's concern could be taken into considerations. These things.
With regard to industrialization, we see there was a homogeneity in culture. But we say that existence of state has been suggested that there was no existence of state. So how do we define that yes, state existed? So it is due to on account of collection of taxes, or because this we could not see when they
No.
said
The most important criteria to understand that whether there was a state or not, it is basically based on collection of taxes and revenue. This criteria has to be there.
how do we define that there was no state at that time?
The reason being, I'll let you know. What do we define? That is why, since we don't have any major evidences, but it has largely been accepted based on the records and archaeological evidences, that Indus Valley civilization was ruled by a class of merchants. Because internal external trade was very flourishing in nature. External trade went up to Mesopotamia. Clear? Internal trade was among all the cities of Harappan civilization. And based on this, it is said that it was ruled by a class of merchants. Now, since class of merchants were ruling, and all of them were concerned to enhance their profitability at this point of time, clear? There was not a political authority who dominated over them to collect taxes. Why? Because there was no need to collect taxes. Why do we need collect taxes? To maintain law and order. How law and order is to maintain? By maintenance of large military force, or rather the bureaucracy, in modern times bureaucracy, in those times soldiers and military force. But you will never come into picture any time that Indus Valley had large military force. They were totally peaceful in nature. Why we have total respect for Indus Valley civilization? Why we take a reference point to Indus Valley civilization? We don't have any single evidence to prove that Indus Valley people maintained a large military force. Since military force was not maintained, so what you need to collect the tax? Why will people give you tax? People want to give you tax when people say that this government or state is maintaining large military force for our protection. If external authority attacks us, the state will have the authority to protect us. Then only will pay a part of the produced as taxes. But since Indus Valley, we don't have any evidence of soldiers. They were highly peaceful people concerned only with diversity and trade at this point of time. There was no need to collect tax. There was no logic to collect tax. And since the taxes were not collected, soldiers were not there. And at this time we say no political authority ruled over them. Why do part away with certain part of your income as taxes to the government even now? Because with these taxes, government provides you basic amenities like water, electricity, clean environment, clean roads, and more above them. With your taxes only, government maintains the defense personnel, the police forces. Police forces for internal law and order, and defense personnel for external protection of this country. Why? Because on our sources. Why? We have given this charge to the state that we'll part away with our income to you, and your responsibility is to protect us. So if law and order is violated, why we start questioning the government in the parliament and every in social media? Because it is the duty of the government to maintain law and order, for which we are paying a part of our income. At that time in Indus Valley, you will never encounter any evidence that there was even a single soldier. If soldier was not there, then why would people pay taxes? And if people did not pay taxes, it is also indicated because there was no political authority. It is perhaps understood that Harappans were being ruled by a class of merchants at that time, traders at that time. Clear? Because trade was in a flourishing condition. And obviously trade has to be there because urban centers cannot flourish without trade. Why do we say urban centers? See, history is very scientific in nature. How do we define urban center even now? We define urban center whereby we say that at least 75% of the people are engaged in non-agriculture activities. But if 75% of the people are engaged in non-agriculture activities, then from where they are getting the articles to survive? The most important thing, food grains. Meaning that it is only possible when surplus agriculture produce is being generated in the villages. If surplus agriculture produce is not generated in the village, urban centers also cannot survive. So we owe a lot. Even when we stay in metropolitan cities, we owe a lot to the farmers who are working day and night in the field in villages, because based on the surplus produce only, we are able to concentrate more on economic diversity. Otherwise, we also had to look for the basic item of survival, the most important being food grains. So Indus Valley people, large agriculture produce was generated. Those agriculture produce were kept in large granaries. Therefore, we have evidences of granaries in Harappan civilization. And based on that produce, we exchange those produce with major items coming from Central Asia, from West Asia, even from Mesopotamia, lapis lazuli, gold, silver, all these were coming. And that led to diversity of arts and crafts in Indus Valley people. All this indicate that they were very peaceful, concerned with trading activities. Harappans were ruled by class of merchants. We don't have any evidence. That is why there's another important thing. See, if you understand, generally history is very simple. The one important thing is, since they did not maintain any soldiers and since there was no any political authority, that is why as soon as the wave of Aryans coming from Central Asia entered India with horse-driven chariots, they easily defeated the people of Indus Valley. They could not resist also. In fact, there's evidence that on the street of Mohenjo-daro, one of the prominent city, large human skeletons has been found with cut marks that indicate certain amount of clash must have taken place. People died on the streets, and therefore these people were who? They were the local people, the local inhabitants. They could not fight, and since they could not fight, they were easily defeated. Aryans entered India. They established their own culture known as the Vedic culture. With arrival of Aryans, who were basically warriors from Central Asia, from here taxes began to be collected, because they believed in soldiers. They believed in one political head, because they came with tribal polity. Tribal head was to be there. And therefore, from Rig Vedic society, the early phase of Aryans, we have a post known as Rajan. And from initially, all taxes began to be collected voluntarily, which is known as Bali. And later on, those taxes began to be collected in a organized and formal matter. Clear? Officers are there, Sangrahitri, who maintain all the taxes. How it started? It started because Aryans believed in political forces. Aryans believed in political authority. Harappans did not believe. That is why we keep on conducting research in Indus Valley zone even now, because we have this legacy to show the whole world that we were very peaceful people, and we believed in prominent peaceful trade. We believed in bilateral relationship. We believed in art and culture, because the art and culture activities were highly developed. We have bronze statues, we have stone statues, we have great bath. These are very important things to show to the whole world, because that is why Indus Valley civilization is a very prominent reference point for us. Clear? It's not because only of the development that took place, also because to show that we left a huge legacy to the northwestern part of India. These things are need to be understood. All these things are very conceptual. It's very correlated. Everything is correlated with each other. That is why state is there. A state has to be criticized largely, especially in developing countries. A state has always to be considered to be very progressive in developed countries where economy is tilted more towards manufacturing and services sector. Till the time the country is agrarian in nature, a state will always be termed as exploitative in nature, because economy is not in our hand. Economy, that is why we define Indian agriculture as gamble in the hands of the monsoon. Still, it is a gamble in the hands of the monsoon. And even after so much of diversification, after 70 years of India's independence, 60% of our population directly or indirectly are associated with agriculture, the primary economic activity. How can a state be progressive in this condition? It cannot be. So the logic is totally based on logic. Clear? Is it fine? Clear? Now coming to feudalism. Now just understand, first of all, the features of feudalism, the concept of feudalism. Clear? I'll let you know that in contrast to modern phase where Europe has witnessed huge amount of development, economy has diversified, in medieval time, Europe was also marked by large dependency on agriculture as primary economic activity. Since agriculture was the primary economic activity, the most important economic asset was land or landed property at that point of time. Since king was autocrat who ruled by virtue of belonging to the family, he never cared for the masses. He never looked after agricultural activities also. Therefore, he wanted to collect revenue or taxes, because with that only he could maintain large military force at this point of time. In order to collect those taxes and revenue from the peasantry class, from the farmers at that point of time, he deputed class of military soldiers. Those class of military soldiers were authorized by the king only to collect land revenue on behalf of the king. And after this land revenue was collected to be deposited to the central treasury. This created a class of landed intermediaries between the ruler on the one hand, masters on the other hand. Landed intermediaries were largely powerful military soldiers who began to collect land revenue. And if the peasants failed to pay land revenue, the land was confiscated by these military soldiers and they were declared to be owners of the plots, owners of the land. This resulted into a new nobility class in Europe known as the feudal lords. And these feudal lords were considered by autocratic monarch to be the owners of the land. Clear? So feudal lords became the owners of the land with all fiscal and administrative rights, and peasants were merely tillers of the land who could be evicted at any point of time. So land ownership of the peasantry class was not accepted in Europe from the very beginning. Land ownership was handed over to the military soldiers or feudal lords. Therefore, feudalism was a very dominant institution that existed in Europe. And this was all primarily because the leader on the top was weak. If central authority will be strong, the power will never be delegated to intermediaries. Clear? Powers were delegated to the intermediaries because the ruler was not as strong. Therefore, there's a difference between empire and province. Empire means all powers are concentrated in the hands of one single person. Clear? This is known, if there's a strong empire, feudalism will never take place. Let's understand the concept. If breakup of empire will take place, feudalism will take place because intermediaries will become too powerful. Clear? So intermediaries or landed gentry became too powerful in Europe, and feudalism became a very prominent institution because centralized authority was weak at that time. Rulers became powerful. Rulers ruled not because of their power and character. They ruled because they belonged to a royal family, even if he was a weak person. Clear? This resulted into feudal structure. This feudalism, or this trend is known as feudalism in Europe, but this trend is quite distinct from the trend of feudalism that began in India. In India, right from ancient and medieval times, I'll let you know, land ownership always belonged to the peasants and the tillers of the land. Clear? Even though Guptas were weak rulers, and they also gave land rights to Brahmins initially, and then to Kshatriyas also, this created landed intermediaries. But those feudal lords of India were not given ownership rights of the land, unlike Europe. Clear? Ownership rights over land always belonged to the peasantry class. This is the most important difference between Indian feudalism and European feudalism. In European feudalism, ownership rights were granted to the feudal lords, but in India, ownership rights were never granted to the feudal lords. In ancient and medieval India, ownership rights always belonged to the peasantry class. Only with arrival of British in India, they got confused with feudal lords in Europe, and feudal lords are big farmers in India. They began to give ownership rights to feudal lords and the permanent settlement and other land revenue settlements, and that created huge amount of resentment among the masses in India. It was because of the confusion of feudalism that existed in Europe, which was never the case in India, because ownership of land under adverse situation also always belonged to the peasantry class, not the feudal lords. This is the basic difference between feudalism in India, feudalism in Europe at that point of time. This was a dominant institution, and like clergy class, feudal lords were also exempted from payment of all forms of taxes, and that led to further resentment among the common masses in the peasantry class, and their grievances began to be highlighted by enlightened philosophers. Even Kant advocated compassionate role to be played by the state, and that resulted into Enlightenment ideas and its popularity in 17th and the 18th centuries. This concept of feudalism is clear. Just understand, if they will talk about empire, in empire there is no scope for feudalism. Clear? Because empire means centralized control of one authority over diverse sections and areas of the country. This is known as empire. Mauryans were emperors because all powers were confined to them. But after Mauryans, empire could not be established in India because rulers proved it to be not as strong as Mauryan rulers, and therefore powers began to be delegated to intermediaries in form of land collection, also revenue collection, and that resulted to feudal trends from Gupta period till early medieval times. When Turks came to India, they again established centralized control over India. Feudalism came to an end. Clear? With this came out with a new system in India known as the Ikta system during Sultanate period, to be replaced by Mansabdari system during Mughal period. Mughal Empire always means centralized control, where feudalism can never exist. We'll come to other features when we discuss feudalism in an Indian context. This broad concept of feudalism is clear, right, about this concept. Right, as per the concept of feudalism, as per the concept of feudalism, landed intermediaries, especially military soldiers, landed intermediaries, especially military soldiers, were given ownership rights over land, in lieu of revenue payment to the state treasury, treasury, T-R-E-A-S-U-R-Y, treasury. Right, this resulted into further exploitation of masses, who were left at the mercy of, the feudal lords, Clear? Right. Such exploitation was highlighted by enlightened philosophers, who began to advocate radical changes, Clear? The three important system, change paragraph now. Clear? Right. One of the pioneer of enlightened philosophy was Immanuel Kant, who belonged to Prussia, right now it's part of Germany, who belonged to Prussia in the 18th century. Right, since his childhood, Kant acquired mastery over disciplines like physics and mathematics. Clear? Right. Such knowledge was based on clear-cut observation, which he highlighted through his literary work, titled as Critique of Pure Reason. The date is only for understanding. You are not supposed to write the date. Don't avoid writing dates and all. Clear? By end of 18th century, it's sufficient. Clear? Critique of pure reason. Right. However, he realized that physical science cannot appeal to large number of people, until and unless it is accompanied with ethics, collective welfare, with ethics. Clear? Like based on his observation of society, he wrote another literary work. Titled as Critique of Practical Reason. Whereby he criticized extreme practicality. In favor of collective welfare. Clear? Right. Finally, he wrote the most important work. Titled as Critique of Judgment. By the end of the 18th century, whereby he advocated that each individual should develop the ability to judge the decisions of authorities, based on logic and rationality. Clear? Change paragraph. That Kant belonged to the deist school of philosophy. We discussed this philosophy yesterday. Belonged to the deist school of philosophy. As he also believed in the existence of God. And advocated universal law of ethics. To be practiced without any deviations. Clear? Right. At the same time, Kant accepted The existence of state, can't accept it. The existence of state, write S capital in state, existence of state as an evil necessity, as an evil necessity to maintain law and order, to maintain law and order. Okay. Right. It is inferred by scholars, INFERRED. It is inferred by scholars, derived by scholars, inferred by scholars that even Kant was not in favor of state. Even Kant was not in favor of state, as it led to dominance of a superstructure over the masses, dominance of a superstructure state over the masses, over the masses, over the masses. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. Immanuel Kant emphasized on complete and integrated knowledge, complete and integrated knowledge to be based on the study of, time and space, based on study of time and space. Clear? Time and space. Right. It resulted into acceptance of history and geography, history indicating time, geography indicating space, acceptance of history and geography as disciplines to complete the circumference, of human perception. It cannot go beyond that. Circumference of human perception. Clear? Right. He was of opinion that correct understanding of time and space, can enable people to take rational and logical decisions, under any circumstance, Clear? Right. In this way, Kant provided the way out. To every problem. And his philosophy is popularly termed as Kantianism. Is the concept clear? Deist philosophy is very clear. He belonged to Deist school only. Clear? The philosophy. Discipline existed, manifested the significance. Yeah, because history existed since the evolution of mankind. Geography existed before, but he manifested the importance of history and geography as discipline. People to revert back to the past, to understand how such phenomena took place in the past, and no such phenomena took place in vacuum. There was contextual reference, spatial variation. If you understand spatial variations along with the flow of time, you will be able to understand what problems have been faced, so that if you are placed in that scenario, you can take further decisions on based on rationality and logic. We had discussed yesterday also, what is the greatest relevance to learn history? Clear? Greatest relevance is to say, history has been over. Then what is the point of reading history? History provides us with clear-cut reference points. Clear? That if you want to take any decision at this point of time, what was the decision taken at that point of time when similar incident took place previously? And if that decision was taken, what were the outcomes of that decision? Pros and cons can be weighted upon. And after this pros and cons is analyzed, you can come out with a decision to be taken under contemporary situation. That is the reference points to be taken from history. If it is not understood, no decision can be taken in coming time. See, 60-70 years of life is not important, or it does not provide the length of time whereby we can only keep on committing mistakes. Clear? We need to learn from the past also. Clear? So that if we were placed or similar person who were placed under such situation, how he acted upon. And if he acted in such situation, what was the outcome? If the outcome was positive, we can go with that formula. If it was not fruitful, we have to abandon by that formula. That is the relevance of history. We need to take reference points from that point. Clear? If Indus Valley people could not protect themselves because they did not military force, what does it indicate? Military force is a mandatory thing. Clear? Defense force is a mandatory thing. Anytime we cannot leave northwestern frontier of India unguarded, because it was left unguarded, we were attacked off and on. In fact, the only route through which India has been attacked, it has always been the northwestern part of India. We can never neglect the northwest frontier even now. Even now it cannot be neglected, because the arch rival of India is sitting back at that corner only. Clear? So we need to understand, even now, all cross-border filtration and all immigration and all problems are taking place across Indo-Pak border only. And that again is the northwestern frontier region of India. Clear? We need to understand that if such situation took place earlier, how it can be avoided with the decision to be taken based on past experience. That's the logic of history. So it was basically logical, and rationality will come when past references are taken into account. This is clear first of all. Clear? This was known as Kantianism. Anything that to me is about Kant. You get short notes on the philosophy of Kantianism. Is that clear? Deism, concept of physics and mathematics, integrated with ethical consideration, that finally led to judgmental considerations when he wrote the Critique of Judgment. Later on he moved forward to declare about the history and geography as disciplines to learn about the past and to take decisions in coming time as well. Now coming back, just understand, clear? Kant was not the only philosopher who promoted enlightened views in 17th and 18th century. He was preceded and also followed by other important philosophers. The next in this category was basically a French philosopher, Voltaire. We'll understand first of all about this philosopher, that is Voltaire. Voltaire was a French philosopher in the 18th century who was a vocal critic of the dominance of the clergy and the church in France and all across Europe. He was of opinion the clergy class has been exempted from all forms of taxation, which is an arbitrary method of autocratic monarchy. He was also of the opinion that clergy class has amassed huge amount of wealth, and church has become a focal point of all sources of corruption in Europe. He began to attack all the privileges enjoyed by the clergy class. He began to criticize the institution of church altogether. And when he began to criticize all these things, people began to develop a sense that church and the clergy class were not infallible. In medieval times in Europe, it became an accepted truth at that point of time that church is an infallible institution. Infallible means church cannot commit any mistake. It's a perfect and ideal institution. Therefore, infallibility degree began to be associated with church. This concept of infallibility began to be challenged by Voltaire, and that gave huge amount of confidence to people also to question the validity of church and this institution of clergy class at this time. This was a big step, rather a bold step taken by Voltaire in France. And this thing which was triggered by Voltaire was taken to an ultimate concluding point by another French philosopher of the 18th century, the philosopher being known as Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Therefore, you get a short notes in mains examination that Voltaire triggered the emotions of human beings in France, which was carried forward effectively by Rousseau. Comment, clear? This was the thing started by Voltaire, how it was taken to a culminating point by Rousseau. We'll discuss about the philosophy of Rousseau elaborately. We are discussing about Voltaire briefly because we'll come to Voltaire again when we discuss French Revolution. But here is a starting point for all Enlightenment ideas, which was carried forward effectively by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He is considered the greatest political philosopher of all time. In fact, he is considered to be father of political science also. Clear? We'll come to discuss about the philosophy of Rousseau. Write about Voltaire first. Right? Next paragraph. Right? Among enlightened thinkers and philosophers, among enlightened thinkers and philosophers, the name of Voltaire, is considered to be significant. Like this philosopher of France, openly criticized the institution of the church, and the dominance of the clergy class, Right, Voltaire strongly opposed the corrupt practices of the church, especially the sale of indulgences, indulgences, sale of indulgences, indulgences. Like he also criticized the exemptions of the clergy class, from taxation in France, Clear, right? Above all, he declared that the church and the clergy class above all he declared that the church and the clergy class were not infallible. They could commit mistakes, were not infallible. Clear? Right. Such radical ideas triggered, triggered revolutionary thinking among masses, which was unleashed, UNLEASHED, which was unleashed effectively by another French philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In the 18th century. Change paragraph. Right. Rousseau is considered to be the greatest political philosopher, of the enlightened phase. Of the enlightened phase. PHASE, enlightened phase. And he wrote an important work. And he wrote an important work titled as Social Contract. Titled as Social Contract. What is there in this book? What is the first line of this book? It's very important quotation. I started this work with a very important quotation.
There should be a relationship between the king and the subjects.
Okay, and he defined that relationship also. What is that his starting line of this work? Social contract. He gave this theory also known as social contract theory. The starting line of this work is, every man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Clear? Naturally every person is free, but because of excessive materialism of this world, he is found himself in chains. That is, all forms of restrictions and bondages. Clear? So it's not natural, it's created bondage. Clear? We'll understand about this. Clear? And based on this concept, why is considered to be father of political philosophy? Because he basically gave the most important principle for the establishment of any state. And this important principles on which a state has to be based. These are two simple words which has given all other political concepts and concepts all across the world. These two words which became the defining principles for any state all across the world. These two simple words are known as the theory of general will. Just understand. Clear? Rousseau was of opinion that a state can come into existence only with the will, the consent of the general masses, meaning thereby a state must not be authoritative in nature. A state must be participatory and consultative in nature based on the consent and will of the common masses. Masses has to give their will, their consent, that the state has to be established for maintenance of law and order. Clear? But at the same time, there should be a contract between the masses and the state. That state will ensure the safety and security and welfare of the masses, and in turn masses will ensure full support to the state in form of payment of taxes and revenue. If any one party also breaches this contract, the other party will have all the right to move away from this contract. So if a state fails to maintain law and order and fails to maintain welfare of the people, people can eliminate that state through revolutionary means. At the same time, if masses fails to pay land revenue and cooperate with the state will have all the right to move away from this contract to take any authoritative measure. Meaning thereby, it was a clear-cut contract and understanding between two parties, the parties being state on the one hand and the people on the other hand, and this parties needed to cooperate with each other till the contract remained valid. Valid means the contract will remain valid till both are basically symbiotic to each other rather than exploitative in nature. This is concept known as general will. Just understand. From these two simple words, that is general will only, we have come out with the concept of sovereignty in political science. Sovereignty means the people in any country needs to be sovereign, and sovereignty by the people will be handed over to their elected head. So on behalf of the people, the elected head will have authority to formulate internal and external policies. From this general will only, we have come to the new concept known as representative democracy, whereby people will elect their representatives to draft their policies, and that ultimately will result into democratic system in political philosophy. So all major concepts of political science and state emerges from two simple words, that is general will. This concept was highlighted by Rousseau in his work The Social Contract, which was written in the 18th century. Now, it proved to be a great mental change among the people because they realized sovereignty, complete authority, ultimate power are in their hands. Clear? So they cannot be dominated by irresponsible authority over them. Therefore, they began to question the authority ruling over them, that is autocratic monarchy ruling over them, feudal lords ruling over them, clergy class ruling over them. And thereafter, they began to question the medieval institution, which ultimately resulted into a very important revolution in Europe, which is known as the French Revolution of 1789. He was the person who created this mental change. That is why we say Voltaire started or triggered the sentiment. It was unleashed by Rousseau at this point of time, and this teachings resulted into mental change and revolutionary change that ultimately resulted into French Revolution of 1789, whereby France was turned from autocratic monarchy to a republican country, that is, country to have its own elected head. Clear? This was done as a result of such philosophy given by Voltaire and Rousseau, proved to be great enlightened philosophers of the 18th century. Philosophy of Rousseau is clear. The general will, from where we have derived the concept of sovereignty and representative democracy. Clear? Write about Rousseau. Write this. Rousseau, in his work, social contract, has mentioned that human beings are born free. But they are everywhere in chains. 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 Clear? Right. He emphasized that restrictions and bondage on human beings, are not natural. He's born free. Are not natural, but artificial. Created due to excessive materialism and social considerations. Excessive materialism and social conditions. Clear? Change paragraph. Right. Rousseau gave the concept of the general will, right? General will within inverted comma, concept of general will, which became the basis of all political philosophies. Very important words. Right. According to this concept, a state should be established on the will or consent of the common masses. Clear? Right. In this way, a contract was to be established. Between the state and the masses. Whereby people needed to cooperate. By paying revenue to the state. While state needed to ensure the welfare, as well as as well as law and order. Law and order. Clear? Right. In case any one party failed, in case any one party failed to deliver, the contract was to be ended. The contract was to be ended. Through any means, radical means also, through any means. Clear? Change paragraph. Right, based on the concept of the general will, based on the concept of the general will, concept of the general will, political principles like popular sovereignty, political principles like popular sovereignty and popular sovereignty with the masses, popular sovereignty and representative democracy, was to be established, democracy, yeah. First time ideas of democracy came bit earlier when American War of Independence took place, but it was simultaneously. He gave recognition to that. Clear? Okay, because by this time another development was taking North America, that is American War of Independence and draft of first written constitution, where they talked rudimentally about democracy. But he gave a clear-cut concept how democracy had to be established based on contract. Yeah, reference. Yeah. Clear? So popular and democracy, popular sovereignty and representative democracy. Stop. The full stop. Clear? Right. In this way, Rousseau is considered to be a person who brought change in the mindset of the people, that resulted into revolutionary sentiments in Europe. Clear? Right? In fact, very important, based on the ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau, there was another philosopher, we'll come to them later, Montesquieu. Ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau. French Revolution took place. By the end of the 18th century. Which marked the height of Enlightenment and modern ideas. With this, Enlightenment came to an end. Height of Enlightenment and modern ideas. With French Revolution, the Enlightenment and modern ideas got completed. It was height, it was completed also. It got effectively merged with ideals of French Revolution, marked by ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Is this clear? Enlightenment ideas clear? Kant and Rousseau, very important philosophers, but Rousseau cannot be discussed without reference of Voltaire. Voltaire started the sentiments, it was unleashed effectively by Rousseau at this time. Theory of general will, social contract, clear? Now this were enlightened thinkers and philosophers. See, again I'll let you know, these are not the only philosophers. We have discussed them because they are explicitly mentioned. There were other scholars, but we'll discuss about them in course of other revolutions, like American War of Independence. We'll come to philosophers like Thomas Paine. We'll come to William Penn also. Based on him only, Pennsylvania was established in the United States. Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of the Rights of Man. Thomas, Benjamin Franklin, all these played important role. Then we'll come to colonies also. But since in the syllabus Kant and Rousseau is mentioned, it should be clearly understood about these two philosophers, as they can be asked anytime. Is the philosophy and ideas of Kant and Rousseau clear? General will clear. This is the most important ideology given by Rousseau at this time. Clear? Now, apart from Enlightenment and modern ideas highlighted in Europe at this time by several philosophers, clear? Enlightenment and modern ideas again began to be promoted in different parts of the world, which were directly or indirectly under European control. That is why the next topic says Enlightenment ideas in the colonies of other continents as well. Why the colonies? Because by this time, due to era of geographical discoveries we had discussed, European countries, especially Britain, France and other countries, began to colonize other parts of the world, including parts like Asia and Africa, and even in American continent as well. And under the influence of these European thinkers and philosophers, certain ideas of enlightenment began to be promoted in these colonies as well. It was directly under the influence of European thinkers and philosophers. That is why we have another topic, spread of enlightenment in the colonies. Before we move on to this topic, the spread of enlightenment in the colonies, anything to be asked about Kant and Rousseau? See, just to recapitulate again, we'll keep on revising also. Clear? Modern age began in Europe with concept of the fall of Constantinople. That only triggered the concept like the concept of Renaissance, accompanied with era of geographical discoveries that started in Italy. The logic also because that was the only mainland after leaving the region of Constantinople or the Ottoman Empire. After this only when started to develop, this was resulting into modern or transitory phase, and in this transitory phase the medieval institutions began to be criticized, like autocratic monarchy, feudalism, dominance of clergy class. It was to be done by enlightened thinkers and philosophers, and enlightened thinkers and philosophers included Kant and Rousseau, who took some major views about human beings and about the establishment of state that created a mental setup in the mind, mental change in the people, among the people, and that resulted to revolutionary sentiments in the end of 18th century that marked the completion of Enlightenment phase that started in 17th and 18th century, because we had discussed Enlightenment is the last phase of the Renaissance that started way back in 15th century with fall of the Constantinople. Understand things in right order. Clear? Now we'll move on to spread of such ideas in the colonies. It was not only the product of European thinkers, some original thinkers emerged in colonies also, the most important being China, where very important philosopher emerged in ancient times, only known as Confucius. But the ideas of Confucius was taken forward under the impact of European philosophers by major thinkers and philosophers of China like Dr. Sun Yat-sen and Mao Zedong, also known as Mao Zedong. So we'll move on to colonies, major colonies where such enlightenment ideas began to take place. And among the colonies, the first one to start this enlightenment phase in the 18th century was the British colony in North America. Just understand, we had discussed yesterday only that another important development associated with the era of geographical discovery was discovery of North America by Columbus, a Spanish sailor. All these sailors started to search a route to Asia and Africa along Mediterranean Ocean, because this region of Constantinople were brought under the control of the Turks. But since navigation was not highly developed, direction was not known to the sailors, sailors began to move to different directions just to search the eastern or the new world. In this process only Columbus started from Spain, and you also need to understand why all these sailors started only from Spain and Portugal. Vasco da Gama coming to India was a Portuguese. They started because if you look into the location of Spain and Portugal, these are peninsular region surrounded by water bodies. Clear? And this peninsula is also known as Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal is located on Iberian Peninsula, and therefore since surrounded by water bodies, they began to promote the sailors to discover new routes. Therefore Spanish sailor Columbus started to search a route towards eastern part of the world, including India. But since navigation and direction was not well developed, he landed up in North America instead. He landed up along the Atlantic coast at this time. Clear? When he landed up, he got confused that he has searched eastern world like this India. He named all the inhabitants of this region as Red Indians. Even now, original Americans are known as Red Indians. But it was a mistaken belief. Rather than discovering India, he had discovered altogether a new continent, that is North America, way back in 1492. But since the discovery of North America, a route towards America was discovered, several Europeans went to North America. Clear? And we'll discuss that American history. 4 European powers went to North America, which corresponds with present United States of America. Just understand here, if you know about the location or the map of United States of America, United States of America is almost in this shape. Clear? This country is almost in this shape. This is Atlantic Ocean, you must be knowing. This is Pacific Ocean, clear? This is United States, which comprises of 50 states right now, clear? 48 states here. One more state is there in the southeastern part, and this state is known as state of Florida, clear? This is Florida. To the eastern side, we have only one major city, that is city of province of California. Otherwise, all other cities are along Atlantic coast. Just understand, whole United States is not uniformly developed, clear? The most major cities of United States are located along Atlantic coast, including New York also, including Washington DC also. And I'll let you know the historical reason why this region is more developed than the central and this region. When Europeans came to this region, just understand, let you know, this is the region of Canada, clear? Beyond Canada, we have one state of America known as Alaska. Alaska is the 50th and the largest state of United States. Beyond this, we have international dateline, and beyond international dateline, we have Japan. This is clear. We have international dateline, we have Japan. This is United States of America. Here it is Mexico. From Mexico, we have Central America, including smaller countries like Nicaragua, other countries like Indies Islands, and below that we have South America, starting with Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile. Clear? This is the range. Clear? You need to understand, Europeans, when Columbus went to this region, clear? Columbus came to this region only, and Spanish people got settled down this time. So this region, that is Florida, was a Spanish colony. But when this route was searched, large number of British went to this region, and they colonized this region along Atlantic coast under the control. And therefore, they began to develop this region from the very beginning. That is why even now, whole United States is not developed. This region is the most developed region. That includes North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, and at the same time, Mississippi adjoining to that region. This region was British colony, and in order to look after these colonies effectively, British divided this into 13 separate colonies. Clear? But in course of time, when British people got settled down in this region, they wanted to break their ties with home country Britain and wanted to stay here permanently. This resulted into American War of Independence, which ultimately resulted into independence of 13 colonies in 1782, which is known as American War of Independence. But how this American War of Independence was promoted in 1776, at this point by the end of 18th century? Again, because some British thinkers and philosophers came to this region. These thinkers and philosophers promoted Enlightenment ideas, and therefore the first colony to witness Enlightenment and modern ideas was the colony, 13 British colonies in North America. And among those thinkers and philosophers, the most prominent person was Thomas Jefferson, clear, who was the first person to start the draft of American Constitution after American War of Independence, and therefore it is said America became the first country to have a written constitution that promoted several high-sounding ideals, including the ideals given by Thomas Jefferson known as the Declaration of the Rights of Man, whereby he gave that there are certain rights which cannot be taken from individuals, and that Declaration of the Rights of Man became the basis of fundamental rights all across the world. Even Indian Constitution has taken the concept of fundamental rights from the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was introduced in American Constitution by Thomas Jefferson. Very important development of modern ideas taking place in the colonies. The first being 13 British colonies in North America. We'll discuss the reason also why these people wanted to get freedom from the home country, that is Britain, because they wanted that they cannot afford to pay any taxes to British Parliament, because none of these representatives were there in British Parliament. Therefore, they raised a slogan also, no taxation without representation. We'll come to all the American history separately. But first of all, we understand Enlightenment ideas taking place in the British colonies in North America. Is this clear first of all? Right, next heading, Enlightenment in the colonies. Enlightenment in the colonies. In the colonies. Clear? Right. The ideas of Enlightenment the ideas of enlightenment began to spread from Europe, to the colonies, in America, and Asia. That since the discovery of American continent by Columbus, the year is 1492, but we'll not write the year here. Columbus, by the end of the 15th century, avoid writing dates. By the end of the 15th century, 18th century, 15th, 18th, by the end of 15th century, 1492, several Europeans went to this continent. Clear? Right. The British people acquired the region of North America, along the Atlantic coast, clear? And for administrative convenience, divided the region into 13 British colonies. 13 British colonies. Even now, in American Constitution, there's a mention of 13 colonies only, not 50 states. Clear? Because these states were added later on. Clear? Even now, American Constitution mentions only about 13 states, all mentioned along Atlantic coast only. Clear? And here only I'll let you know very important information, that the oldest colony of Britain is not these colonies in America. The oldest colony of Britain is just adjoining to this region in North Atlantic Ocean. Which is that region? Which is the oldest colony of Britain? That is always in news, and that too for dubious reason. Even now, it is the colony of Britain. There's the oldest colony of Britain, because British people were coming from this side, clear? And they suffered huge amount of casualty also, clear? They were coming from Atlantic coast, and here they did not come first. They established the colony first of all in one island located in North Atlantic. This is the oldest colony of Britain. And in the South Atlantic, while they were coming from this side, here they established the second colony. And these two regions are still British colonies. The oldest colony of Britain located beside the Atlantic coast of North America is Bermuda Triangle. Clear? Bermuda Triangle has the dubious distinction of sinking anything that comes its way. Clear? It is the oldest colony of Britain even now. And in South Atlantic, the second oldest colony of Britain is the region known as island of St. Helena. Clear? And therefore we'll discuss that this was the island where Napoleon was sent after his defeat, and he stayed there for 6 years till he died in the year 1821. Oldest colony of Britain is Bermuda Triangle. The second oldest colony is St. Helena, and because they came from this side, clear, still they are British colonies, even though these were liberated in course of time. Clear? Is that fine? Clear? Right, next. Clear? Right. The 13 British colonies, decided to become independent by the end of the 18th century. By the end of the 18th century, due to ideas of British thinkers and philosophers, most of them were British. British thinkers and philosophers. Thinkers and philosophers. Clear? Right. The pioneering role in this direction. The pioneering role in this direction. Role, R-O-L-E, in this direction was played by William Penn, P-E-N-N, was played by William Penn. William Penn, who strongly advocated high degree of, who strongly advocated high degree of autonomy for British colonies, which inspired people, for war of independence, War of Independence. Clear? Right. He became highly popular. And based on his name, an important region in North America, was named as Pennsylvania. Okay? Right. However, the greatest enlightened philosopher in British colony, of America, was Thomas Jefferson. Very important. Was Thomas Jefferson. Clear? Right. He issued a charter, C-H-A-R-T-E-R. He issued a charter titled as, right within inverted comma, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Titled as the Declaration of the Rights of Man, close inverted comma, of the rights, whereby he emphasized that there are certain inalienable rights of individuals, which cannot be taken away, by any authority, Right, next, clear? Any authority. Right, this declaration became the basis. Of the fundamental rights at global level, even India, at global level. Clear? Right, based on the philosophy of Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, We'll come to all these separately, also American history. Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, the first American president, and George Washington. America drafted the first written constitution. America drafted the first written constitution, which is still considered to be a benchmark, for political thinkers. We'll come to this constitution elaborately. Political philosophers. Clear? This constitution for the first time provided for Republican head as President of America. This constitution for the first time provided for ideal federal system, separation of powers between union and states. This constitution for the first time provided for the principle of separation of powers between executive, legislature and judiciary. This constitution for the first time provided for an important concept known as fundamental rights. This constitution also included clause of slavery that became highly controversial, and in course of time it resulted into American Civil War under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln. Yesterday only we completed celebrated anniversary of the most decisive battle which was fought in American Civil War on the basis issue of slavery, and that battle is known as Battle of Gettysburg. It was fought on 1st of July 1863 way back in America. Welcome to Battle of Gettysburg, which was very decisive in nature, and with defeat of certain states, slavery was abolished by Abraham Lincoln in 1865. But just after this, Abraham Lincoln was publicly assassinated and issue of slavery was abolished from American Constitution. We'll come to American history. But this was spread of Enlightenment ideas in the colonies, the first being America, North America, the major role played by Thomas Jefferson at this time. Clear? Now just understand. Clear? While all these Enlightenment ideas was taking place in British colony of North America, Britain had another colony in Asia where Enlightenment ideas began to take place by the end of 18th century and by the beginning of the 19th century. This colony of Britain was none other than India at this time. Enlightenment and modern ideas began in India also at this time only, and that too it cannot be denied under British influence. The reason was that by the end of beginning of 19th century, a great philosopher emerged in India who believed in the complete synthesis of the Eastern and the Western culture, who is considered to be the pioneer of modern Enlightenment ideas in India, who is also taken as the father of Indian Renaissance, and this person was none other than Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So Enlightenment and modern ideas began to take place in British colony of India from the beginning of 19th century under the pioneership or role played by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, which was carried forward by other thinkers and philosophers in different religions of India after Raja Ram Mohan Roy. The second greatest philosopher and thinker being Swami Dayanand Saraswati in Hinduism, and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in Islamic faith, and Dadabhai Naoroji in the religion of Parsis or Zoroastrianism. So influence of Enlightenment ideas in Europe percolated to the Indian part as well, and Raja Ram Mohan Roy is considered to be under strong British influence because Raja Ram Mohan, who believed in a strong synthesis between Eastern and Western culture, wanted to abolish superstitious beliefs and practices in India like sati, and at the same time even supported British on permanent settlement in India. Make it very clear, the first land revenue settlement in Bengal was supported by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Why? We'll discuss the features of permanent settlement that supported the Zamindari class in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha at this time. So Enlightenment was there in this colony of India as well. Clear? Right, next paragraph. In the process of the spread of Enlightenment and modern ideas, the spread of Enlightenment and modern ideas, British colony of India witnessed witnessed modern thinking by the beginning of the 19th century. Beginning of the 19th century. 19th century, clear? Right, the most important philosopher to promote enlightenment in India, was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Ram Mohan Roy, who was an expert of both Hinduism and Christianity. He wrote a work on Christianity, the precepts of Jesus. Clear? Hinduism and Christianity. Right. He strongly believed in the synthesis of the Eastern and the Western cultures. In order to ensure exchange of ideas between India and Britain, Clear? Like under the leadership of this leader, socio-religious reform movements began in India. Based on the principles of rational thinking and scientific logic. He also belonged to deist school, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Scientific thinking, rational thinking and scientific logic. Rationality and logic. Right, in this way, this philosopher also belonged to the deist school of philosophy. Deist school of philosophy, D-E-I-S-T, deist school of philosophy. See, modern India is all about ideologies. We'll come to that. Clear? The whole modern India till the beginning of national movement, I'll tell you, we have study in a different format. Clear? The whole modern India till the rule of British India Company will study under the three broad headings of ideologies. These three ideologies are, first of all, Orientalism. Second ideology is known as evangelicalism, and third philosophy is known as utilitarianism. Clear? We'll understand the whole company's role in three philosophy. Clear? And Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a great supporter of utilitarian philosophy. Clear? Utilitarian means greatest welfare of greatest number of people, which was started by British philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. We'll come to that. Clear? Britain ruled over India with different ideologies. The starting ideology being Orientalism, then evangelicalism, which focused on religious conversions of Indians to Christianity, and third being utilitarianism, that is greatest good of greatest number of people. Under utilitarian philosophy only they began to promote certain welfare measures like construction of railways in India, development of telegraph lines in India, postal system in India, abolition of child marriages in India. All these was under utilitarian philosophy, which was taken from British thinkers and philosophers, applied to India. Whole modern history till beginning of national movement will try to understand under the format of three ideologies. In optional history, you have to write based on ideologies. Clear? You cannot write straightforward answers in GS. In general studies, we don't discuss these ideologies. In optional, it has to be done on these ideologies. Clear? This is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Right? Next paragraph. The enlightened ideas of Raja Ram Mohan Roy the enlightened ideas of Raja Ram Mohan Roy were carried forward by several Indian thinkers and philosophers. Several Indian thinkers and philosophers like Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and Dadabhai Naoroji, Right, these Indian thinkers tried to reconcile religious philosophy with modern and scientific thinking, which led to Indian Renaissance in the 19th century. Now you can understand and appreciate very well, clear? European Renaissance started in 15th century, clear? Indian Renaissance started in 19th century. Almost there's a gap of 4 centuries. Since there's a gap of 4 centuries, we are trying to grow fast to catch up with that gap, to bridge that gap. And since that gap is there, obviously with this gap, India cannot emerge to be ideologically a settled country without certain amount of more time taken to settle all differences. Clear? So Britain took a lead, or European took a lead with ideas. The ideas that came to them was much before than India. There's a gap of 4 centuries altogether. And we are trying to bridge that 4 centuries gap throughout modern phase when Enlightenment ideas began to take place. We have speeded this process after India's independence as we are away from colonial domination and the control rests with the people of this country. Clear? So backwardness, or rather the country India lacking behind other countries, is based on ideas, as there was lack or gap of 4 centuries from the very beginning. Clear? In modern age. This was beginning of ideas. Welcome to Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Sir Syed Khan, elaborately modern ideas. Here we're discussing from the perspective of spread of Enlightenment ideas from Britain to other colonies. Clear? Like next paragraph. In the process of the spread of enlightened ideas, another European colony in Asia, China exhibited growth of modern ideas in the 20th century, much later than India, in the 20th century. Clear? Right. Enlightenment in China was not completely imported from the West. It's very different. Was not completely imported from the West, as it was originally promoted in ancient times. By Confucius, Chinese philosopher, by Confucius. Confucius, by Confucius. Clear? Right. However, exact shape to the philosophy of Confucius, was given by a Western educated Chinese leader, Western educated Chinese leader, educated Chinese leader, Dr. Sun Yat-sen. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who is regarded as father of Chinese nationalism, who is regarded as father of Chinese nationalism. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, clear? Right? This leader emphasized upon modern nationalism, emphasized upon modern nationalism against Europeans, modern nationalism against Europeans, comma, establishment of democracy, establishment of democracy, and right of equal livelihood, and right of equal livelihood, no discrimination, equal livelihood, LIVELIHOOD, equal livelihood. Right? In order to promote these ideas, he established the Nationalist Party of China, right, in capital. He established the Nationalist Party of China, locally termed as the Kuomintang Party, KMT, locally termed as the Kuomintang Party. The party still works in China. Locally termed as the Kuomintang Party, KMT, termed as the Kuomintang Party. Okay? Right, based on the ideas of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, China fought a prolonged war to emerge as an independent country, by the middle of the 20th century. Welcome to Chinese history, clear? He was not alone. After some time, a communist leader came to China that is known as Mao Zedong, popularly known as Mao Zedong. He established Communist Party of China. Conflict began between KMT and Communist Party of China. We'll come to definitely add when we discuss Chinese history. This was spread of Enlightenment and modern ideas in all European colonies, or major European colonies, first of all America, then India, and then China. Clear? This major developments took place in the 18th and the 19th century. In China, it started off late in the 20th century. It's a great point to understand. China was not a nationalist country till the middle of 20th century. In fact, Chinese nationalism started much later than India. In India started in the second half of the 19th century. In China, started in the beginning of the 20th century. But later on, China emerged to be a strong nation state in course of time, unlike the problems that is being faced in India. Clear? So Chinese nationalism was started much later than India, but China emerged to be a strong nation state, unlike India in post-independent era. Clear? This development spread of Enlightenment ideas in colonies. Beyond this, we'll move on to another important and conceptual topic, that is a spread of socialist ideas up to Marx. Clear? Very important, very conceptual, you get questions. But before that, anything that needs to be asked with respect to spread of Enlightenment ideas. Enlightenment ideas did not take place in other colonies of Africa and all. It was only in North America, India and China. To some extent it was in Japan, but it was not a very prominent one. Clear? It was in these colonies of India, America and China. anything that needs to be asked? Any idea? Any question that needs to be asked? We'll come to all these areas elaborately also, but here we need to understand how enlightenment began to develop in the European colonies, America and the British. America was not only Britain, it was in the France also, it was in Spain also. But Britain played the most important role, and 13 British colonies began to emerge independent on the philosophy of British thinkers and philosophers only. Clear? Why and how it took place, we'll discuss in the American War of Independence. Spread is clear first of all in the colonies. Anything, yeah, please.
Sir, in America, when the Constitution was enacted, you said there was a provision of
Slavery.
removal of the slavery.
It was basically initially slavery was accepted. Yeah, that is why it's a unique thing about China, about America. Just understand, America is considered to be a highly progressive country, and American Constitution is considered to be the most progressive document drafted by humankind till this date. In fact, whenever any country drafts its constitution to establish a federal form government, we compare the federal form government of that constitution with Federation of America. And if there is any deviation from American federal system, we call it that it is not a pure federal system, because American Constitution provides for pure and absolute federal system. Clear? In India, therefore, since our federal system is not as American Federation, it's tilted towards the union or the center, we call it to be quasi-federal, semi-federal. The benchmark is still by American Constitution. But then, again I'll let you know, when it was drafted in 1789, it came into force in 1789 only. And after this constitution came into force, all the provisions were very progressive in nature, but indirectly they accepted the provision of slavery. Clear? They didn't use the word slavery in the American Constitution in real form. They used the term in American Constitution at this time, and this term was unfree people. Clear? Slavery was not the term used. They used the term unfree people, but the logic says, why unfree people also? Why this was necessary to understand or to accept unfree people as in American Constitution itself? There's a logic and there's a reason behind that. That only became a reason for American Civil War also. Clear? When American or 13 British colonies, as I told you, if you look into the map of United States, it is almost in this shape. This is Atlantic Ocean, this is Pacific Ocean. Initially, the 13 colonies became independent in 1782. Clear? This region was under France. It was known as Louisiana or New France. Clear? This region originally was under Portuguese, but later on Mexicans acquired this region. Clear? And another country of Mexico was there. This small region was under Spain, known as Florida. This was the scenario. I'll let you know. Clear? When 13 colonies became independent, they started to develop very fast. Clear? When they started to develop very fast at this point of time, they accumulated huge amount of wealth, because now this wealth was not to be transported to home country, that is Britain. When they became highly rich at this point of time, then they decided to expand towards the central and the western side. Clear? They purchased the whole region which was under France from Napoleon in 1802. And when they purchased this region, they added some more states to American Federation. After this, they defeated the Mexicans here in 1848, acquired this region also. So whole region came under the control, and this region was divided into 48 states. 49th and 58th added much later. 49 was the region of Hawaii in Japan, and 58th being Alaska, purchased from Russia. So it was not taken by force, it was purchased as a commercial deal by these American states. But when they were extending, just understand, clear? That is why history has to be understood, as I say, it has to be understood from geographical perspective. As they were expanding from the very beginning, there was a geographical distinction in this whole North America or present United States. The northern part had huge reserves of minerals, Rocky Mountains even now, clear? Since there were huge reserves of minerals at this point of time, these minerals began to be used in large and heavy industries established in North America. Now, since industrial growth was to be ensured in North American states, large number of people were to be freed from the clutches of the master, because until slaves were liberated, how could they be employed as workers in the factories and industries? So northern states, they had abolished slavery from the very beginning, as they wanted free people, free from the masters, to work as workers, just because they had huge industrial growth in this region. But unlike this region was largely agrarian in nature, and most important the activity being done is cotton plantations were done in large regions of the southern part. Since cotton plantation was done by large number of estates holder, rich farmers, they employed their slaves as workers in cotton plantation. Since slaves were worked for them without taking wages on them, it was very profitable for the masters. That is why, since slavery was required here in order to continue with cotton plantation, and most of these cotton plantations were exported back to Britain because Britain emphasized on textile industry during Industrial Revolution. These masters in the southern part never wanted slavery to be abolished. So when Constitution was drafted in 1789, they made it clear they will become a part of American Constitution only when slavery is accepted in this document. If slavery is not accepted, they will not be a part of this American Federation. Therefore, American thinkers who drafted Constitution, they had to include this term in Indian Constitution, American Constitution, unfree people. So slavery got recognition. But later on, the issue of slavery only became controversial when Abraham Lincoln became US president. He wanted to abolish slavery, and when he decided to abolish slavery after becoming president in 1860, southern states rebelled, they revolted, and that resulted to conflict between northern and the southern states, which is known as American Civil War. This civil war continued for 4 years from 1861 till 1865, and that resulted, or that ended with the defeat of the southern states, the victory of the northern states, and thereafter slavery was abolished in 1865. So in 1865, from American Constitution, unfree people clause was deleted, and thereafter American Constitution became a perfect written document all across the world. Initially slavery was there. That is why you will realize the topic that is says with regard to American history also. Look into American Civil War with reference to Abraham Lincoln and the abolition of slavery, because without slavery it cannot be discussed. The word slavery was not mentioned. The word was unfree people. We'll come to American Constitution history separately. This is clear. So even now the whole America is not developed. This part, the Atlantic Ocean dominated by Britain, was largely developed. We have only one region which is relatively developed on the eastern side, western side, and that is the large province of state of California. California is the only thing which is developed. Otherwise, all developed cities are along Atlantic coast. Washington DC, New York, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, all these are located. Even Florida. Adjoining to this is the region of Mississippi in the eastern side. Mississippi is a very flowing river, highly flowing river, and it is considered to be a major navigation zone of America. This has historical validity. We'll come to that historical validity. Clear? This much is clear. Anything else? Seat of power, Washington DC. At this time, northern part. Initially Washington DC, later on Washington DC with draft of Constitution. Initially it was the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the seat of power initially. Constitution began to be drafted also at Philadelphia only. It's known as Philadelphia Assembly. Clear. It took 2 years to draft the Constitution from 1787 till 1789. Philadelphia. Later on, when George Washington himself became the first president of America, as per written Constitution, Washington DC, named after him only, became the seat of power. It's clear. American history. We'll come to American history separate, huh? Europe to India. Huh. There was any? Yeah, obviously. See, that is why we ask a question modern history. India broke the Western fetters with Western hammers. We'll discuss. What do you mean by that? India broke the Western fetters with Western hammers. Western fetters here means Western imperialism. Western hammers means Western enlightenment or modern ideas. Because if these modern ideas could not have come into India, modern nationalism could not have taken place. Yeah, obviously, malpractices. Apart from that, the most important thing, Western education. The most important thing was Western education. With Western education, only sense of modern nationalism came to India. And with sense of modern nationalism, the leaders of India realized the basic problem of India is lack of modern nationalism. If people of India are not united on this concept, we cannot start a struggle against Western imperialism. So English education was the most positive outcome, cannot be denied. Clear? And about English education, abolition of superstitious practices like sati, legalization of widow remarriages, abolition of child marriages, all these are basically Western influence over India, enlightenment. That is why Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a big supporter of Britain. He was not opposed to Britain. And in fact, I'll let you know, he was highly respected in Britain. when he was promoting his ideas at this time, later Mughal emperor was ruling from Delhi. One later Mughal emperor was Akbar II. Akbar II only gave him the title of Raja. He came to be known as Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And Akbar II asked him to go to Britain in order to ask him, the British monarch, for increment in the amount of pension. Because Mughal emperors, we'll discuss in modern history, became pensioner of British company. Since Raja Ram Mohan was highly respected, he went to Britain for the increment of Mughal emperor. But while he was in Britain only, he died at a place called Bristol in 1833, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Clear? Therefore, he proved to be a great supporter of British rule in India. British were basically, that's why I'll let you know. In modern history, we'll discuss, that is not different from general studies. In modern history, we'll discuss British rule over India in terms of ideologies. Orientalism. Orientalism means respect to the culture of India. They respected Indian culture. That is why, guided by Orientalism, they began to establish traditional educational institutions in India. Calcutta Madrasa by Vaughan Hastings. Sanskrit College by Jonathan Duncan. You got this question last in prelims only to match it. Clear? All these were guided by Oriental philosophy. They respected the Oriental culture, Eastern culture. Then after that, they began to follow Christianity. And this ideology is known as evangelicalism. They began to support the depressed sections of India. They began to provide them with education facilities, medical facilities, and large number of depressed sections, including tribal people, began to accept Christianity. The religious conversions were promoted under evangelicalism. From here, they began to discredit Indian culture. Clear? They said that Indian culture had nothing but to depress the people, and therefore Christianity can ensure the welfare of the masses, and people began to get converted into Christianity. This is known as reactionary ideology of British, known as evangelicalism. After evangelicalism only, British began to follow the most developed ideology of their own India, known as utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is maximum good of maximum number of people. Clear? And that's because of evangelicalism only, British had to face a wrath also. There was a mighty revolt in 1857 because of evangelicalism. Because large-scale religious conversions could not be tolerated by orthodox sections like Brahmins and ulemas. So ideologies also played an important role. The whole company's rule over India till the beginning of national movement, we will try to understand based on Orientalism, evangelicalism, and utilitarianism. This is the new thing to be understood. Clear? So it has to be guided under context of ideologies. Modern India is based on ideologies. British rule with ideas. There's no doubt. Clear? This is fine. Clear? So spread to college. Now we'll move on to a very conceptual thing, that is rise of the socialist ideas up to Marx, Karl Marx. Clear? First of all, discuss what was the background that led to the rise of socialist ideas. First of all in Europe and later on in other parts of the world. And it reached its scientific culminating point with the theory given by German philosopher Karl Marx. His philosophy also being known as scientific socialism. Clear? First of all, we understand what do we mean by ideology of socialism. Then we'll understand how it began to develop, first of all in Europe. Clear? See, since we are coming to ideologies, just understand, you are supposed to be very clear in ideologies, what exactly it stands for and what are the implications of different ideologies. Clear? And since we'll start with socialism, here only we'll discuss about socialism also, here we'll discuss about communism also, and here we'll discuss about fascism also. Clear? Because socialism is the mother of both. Socialism is the mother of fascism also. Socialism is the mother of communism also. Clear? And therefore, you need to be very clear about these concepts. Why do we say that fascism is the child of socialism? Communism is the natural outcome of socialism. Socialism is the parent ideology from where fascism also takes place, dictatorship also takes place, and at the same time, communism also takes place. Is that clear? Okay, we'll continue start with socialism. We'll start with this topic tomorrow. Clear? We'll start with this topic tomorrow. Clear? Time is over. Clear? We'll continue tomorrow. Clear? 11. Tomorrow we'll start with this ideology. Clear? Thank you. Keep on revising, please. Clear? Keep on revising the class notes. Please do one thing. Don't have to rush anywhere. I'm telling you. Even though I've given you notes, if you find time, it's only for additional information. But whatever I'm giving you notes, it's sufficient enough. Do revise. Try to make synopsis if possible. If not, notes are already in prepared form. I'm telling you, on Sunday we'll be writing test. On Friday I'll discuss all the previous questions last 5 years based on this topic, and based on the topic we'll have test on Sunday. Keep writing. Writing is an integral part. Clear? Is that okay? Clear? We'll continue from here tomorrow. Thank you.